Tonight, the Premier of Saskatchewan returns from a second trip to Washington, hoping his team can help avert U.S. tariffs set for March 4th. Also, Saskatchewan has yet to sign on to the soon-to-launch billion-dollar National School Food Program. Plus, Saskatoon's Braden Shen joins a special club in the NHL.
This is CBC Saskatchewan News.
It's Friday, February 28th, and the CBC Saskatchewan News starts right now. Hi there, thanks for watching. Premier Scott Moe is back from a second trip to Washington. It was a last-minute push to avoid U.S. tariffs on Canadian exports. They're supposed to come into effect March 4th. That's next week. And as Jeremy Warren reports, Moe says he's not ruling out counter-tariffs.
The Premier brought some backup on his second trip to Washington, D.C., including Saskatchewan business leaders to help lobby against tariffs. They met elected officials and insiders friendly with President Trump, hoping to use their influence to stop the 25% tariffs on Canadian goods heading south. So will Moe fire back with counter-tariffs on U.S. goods? He says he hopes he won't have to, but all options are open.
It should not be our goal. And there will be decisions that will have to be made, should this be the case, and I'm very hesitant about hypothetical what-ifs. But there will have to be decisions that may be made as we find our way through this conversation.
In Regina, the NDP is pushing for the province to uncork some retaliation. The opposition wants the Saskatchewan Liquor and Gaming Authority to pull American booze from distribution.
This is about all the tools in the toolbox, all hands on deck to show, first of all, our pride as people who come from Saskatchewan, our pride as Canadians, and our willingness to dig in and push back in any way that we can against threats to our economy and threats to our sovereignty.
The Sask Party government is hoping for another last-minute delay, which Trump has done previously. If not, the province says to expect some economic pain.
And so as a family, wherever you are in North America, any prolonged broad-based tariff imposition is going to cost you more in everything you do. Two, the ultimate cost might be your job, and because industries will shift investment out of North America. And so that's the threat.
Besides March 4th, there are two more deadlines to watch for. March 12th is when the U.S. says it'll bring a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum. Then in April, it's promising reciprocal tariffs on a global scale. Jeremy Warren, CBC News, Saskatoon.
Experts say Saskatchewan is dead last when it comes to spending money on school food programs. And while there's a national school food program available, the Premier is still waffling about whether he wants to sign up. Alexander Kwan has more.
It's a moment where we finally acknowledged the value of school food.
That's how one expert describes the moment last year when Canada announced its national school food program. The $1 billion plan is a first for Canada, which has lagged behind other countries in providing meals to children. But with the program set to launch soon, Saskatchewan has yet to put pen to paper.
So our education minister will have more to say there in the days ahead. Always looking with the programs that come forward from the federal government as to what happens at the 5-year mark. Often these are 3 or 5 year programs, and then the funding isn't replenished.
But advocates and experts say not taking part in the program could be a huge miss. A professor of community health at the University of Saskatchewan says Moe's comments are hard to hear.
I know that the whims of governments change when there are different governments in power. However, I think that this just makes sense. I mean, we are literally just doing what the whole rest of the world is already doing.
There are no hard numbers available, but if the deal is anything like the one signed by Manitoba, Saskatchewan could be walking away from $17 million over 3 years and turning its back on children in need.
We do have some programs, but they're small. They're targeted, meaning that only kids who are sort of perceived as being poor or needing a program are offered or are generally offered the program. There aren't enough dollars for every kid to participate.
Studies show children do better when there is food available at their school. Experts say that's why Saskatchewan needs to be part of the federal program that could launch before June. Alexander Kwan, CBC News, Regina.
A panel of Supreme Court judges has sided with Métis Nation Saskatchewan over the provincial government. Friday morning, its decision dismissed the province's appeal. The case stemmed from a uranium project in northwestern Saskatchewan. The Métis Nation requested a judicial review of the province's consultation, alleging it wasn't done right. Saskatchewan took issue with a section about land rights. It stated the nation's land rights is part of a different, ongoing court case from 2020.
The decision that we got today from the Supreme Court says that while that 2020 action is pending, we can bring forward specific instances where we challenge the province's duty to consult. So we have really clear direction that is not an abusive process, that is not a duplication, and in fact, it's our right to do so.
The judicial review covering the consultation will now proceed through the court process. The Saskatchewan government says it respects the court's decision. This week, the provincial government unveiled several legal changes to crack down on illegal drug use and trafficking. Those changes don't include forcing people into treatment for now. But the Justice Minister is not ruling it out. Helena Mahalik has more on what's being considered and why some people are already upset about it.
Drug laws are changing in Saskatchewan, and the stakes are being raised for people caught using or distributing fentanyl and meth. The government wants to give police more power to seize property, suspend licenses, and arrest people. But it's also considering whether to follow the lead of Alberta and introduce involuntary treatment. That essentially means drug users are detained and forced to detox and undergo treatment against their will.
Alberta's been talking for some time about their involuntary treatment. Saskatchewan's been watching with a keen eye on that piece of legislation and the development of it. We're certainly watching very carefully and are considering what our options might be in that same space.
In Alberta, the government plans to spend $180 million over 3 years to build 2 involuntary drug addiction treatment centers, and a proposed law called the Compassionate Intervention Act would allow family members, doctors, or police to request mandatory treatment from a judge if someone is deemed a danger to themselves or others, much like a mental health warrant. But a public health expert here in Saskatchewan opposes the model.
You might be able to drag someone into a center, force them to stop using substances at that time, but when the opportunity becomes available again, they will take it because we haven't addressed those underlying drivers of substance use, which is really rooted in trauma and a lack of available resources.
A national civil liberties group strongly opposes involuntary treatment.
The priority should actually be towards funding voluntary treatment and not compelling forced treatment for people with addictions. Involuntary treatment should be an absolute last resort, if anything.
But the NDP is delaying judgment.
I have spoken with parents who have lost their loved one, who wish that there was some measure that they could have kept them safe until they were ready to accept treatment. So I think we're open to all possibilities.
The latest federal figures from September show that more than 47,000 Canadians have died from toxic opioids since 2016. Helena Mahalik, CBC News, Saskatoon.
The Regina Police Service has its aerial support unit back in the sky. It was damaged in April of 2024 and it needed repairs. The ASU helps officers track suspects from above using its onboard camera technology. It returned to service on February 14th, and within its first week, it had helped in nearly 60 calls and assists in 13 arrests. The ASU allows police to have better views of suspects and can direct officers on the ground into hiding spots and ditched suspicious items. The service says it's thrilled to have the plane back in service. A sad update on a story we brought you about 2 weeks ago. A beloved Balgony High School teacher and coach who was left paralyzed in a freak accident has died. In a post on Facebook Thursday night, Kelly Cruppy's wife, Erin, shared that Kelly passed away. She wrote, quote, "For 6 weeks he fought with everything he had, but in the end, his body had been through too much." The 46-year-old tripped and fell headfirst into a wall during a basketball game in January, leaving him paralyzed from the neck down. And then after a surgery, He suffered a stroke and remained unresponsive. In his honor, Greenall renamed its annual junior basketball tournament to the Cruppy Classic, and the community also supported a massive GoFundMe that raised nearly $100,000 to support his challenges ahead. He leaves behind his wife, Erin, of 24 years, and their 2 children, Leighton and Hannah. It was a gloomier, cooler day in Saskatoon, from above normal temperatures to back down below. We're in for a bit of a weather roller coaster that hangs out around the freezing mark over the next couple of days, which means puddles and ice. Riley Lachuk will have the details of your weekend forecast after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Voters in Ontario have made their choice. Doug Ford and his Progressive Conservatives have been elected to a historic third straight majority. In his victory speech, Ford repeated his promise to protect the province from U.S. President Donald Trump's proposed 25% tariffs on Canadian goods.
We ask the people for a mandate, a strong mandate that outlives and outlasts the Trump administration. A mandate to do whatever it takes to protect Ontario. Well, friends, the people have spoken. They're ready to stand up for Canada.
Ontario was not scheduled to head to the polls until June 2026, but Ford called the snap election just over a month ago, saying he needed a strong mandate to deal with the Trump administration. The gamble appears to have paid off. Ford is the first party leader in Ontario to win 3 consecutive majorities in 65 years. Premier Scott Moe and his delegation spent more time in D.C. this week, and the goal, of course, averting tariffs. But there's also talk about the potential return of the Keystone XL pipeline. The Morning Edition's political panel dug into all of it on Friday morning.
I've written a couple columns about how little influence local leaders, provincial premiers, even at this particular point, the Prime Minister of Canada seemed to have on Donald Trump right now. Now, the indication of that is certainly evident in the fact that we're going to see 25% tariffs, so Trump says, on the 4th, 50% tariffs on steel and aluminum. And when Moe went down to Washington, he took representatives of our local steel company, Everest, that are certainly going to be hurt by that. This doesn't mean that Moe shouldn't be doing this, because I don't think this is one of the typical trade junkets that we've been writing about for so many years. We have our economy on the line right now, and this is where he should be doing his utmost and doing whatever he can. So credit him for doing whatever he can. It's just very unfortunate that under the circumstances of having an irrational U.S. president with all the power and not listening to really anybody or logic, that people like premiers in Canada or even senators in the United States or governors that might have close affiliations with Donald Trump have any influence. And that is, in essence, the problem right now.
And speaking of the economy, Moe posted on social media on Wednesday this: effective immediately, all pipeline permits going east, west, or south received in Saskatchewan will be considered pre-approved. We encourage all provinces and the federal government to do the same. Trump has said he wants Keystone XL, but also has said in the same breath almost that Americans don't need Canadian oil, which doesn't really jive. Danielle Smith has come on board and said, we're happy to look into what Saskatchewan's doing. What do you make of this from the Premier?
Well, if we're pre-approving pipelines, I hope it's not going through my backyard. I'll NIMBY this one. And okay. I think that is sort of the essence of the problem here. He can't pre-approve anything. There's federal regulation. The federal government regulates pipelines through the country, and thus the problem when you're having the resistance in Quebec with what's a solid idea of having a good east-west pipeline. The government here, Brad Wall before Scott Moe, have been huge proponents of the Keystone XL pipeline because it cuts corner through the southwest corner of the province here, and it also would provide jobs at Everett Steel. So there's a logical reason for that, and that puts the NDP in a bit of a bind when they are arguing, and maybe rightfully so, that you can't have promote a pipeline sending oil down south when you're being threatened by these tariffs. It gets complicated very quickly. An east-west pipeline has always made sense to me, but once again, it's bogged down in jurisdictional issues that Scott Moe and others can't deal with and can't necessarily force through. We've seen that through Quebec. So the notion of him pre-approving it, and we're seeing Daniel Smith agree with it, has me slightly suspicious that this is more of a political statement, and I'm bothered by that because the strength of Canada right now is unity, and the strength of that must be all premiers speaking with the same voice. I'm starting to see where Daniel Smith certainly, and she has all along, departing from the choir. Scott Moe basically staying within, but with this particular issue, I kind of wonder where he's going with it in the broader context. And if we try and strike our own deal as a small jurisdiction like Saskatchewan or even Alberta, that's slightly bigger, with the United States, we're not going to get anywhere. The strength in dealing with the Donald Trump administration will be strength and unity. And if this is about going off on our own, it's problematic. That said, we do have specific issues in Saskatchewan related to oil and gas that are different than other places.
A live look at the drive home on the Broadway Bridge in Saskatoon. -8 degrees. We're now below normal in the Bridge City. Riley Lachuk now with a look at your forecast.
Well, Sam, a bit of a reality check through the afternoon hours. Certainly after that cold front swept through, here's a look at our daytime highs. Looks a little bit deceiving because 3 degrees in Regina, this was the temperature at midnight, as were most of these temperatures through particularly on the eastern side of the province and into the southeastern corner. These were temperatures at midnight. Through the afternoon hours, here's a look at your afternoon temperatures dropping to -6 by mid-afternoon in Regina, -7 in Saskatoon, and still quite a bit of that Pacific warmth into the southwestern corner, Maple Creek at 8 degrees. You can really see where that ridge of high pressure and the jet stream just kind of sit as it cuts across parts of the province. And yes, looking at our upper level winds, aided in part by this area of low pressure that's now sunk over northern Quebec, helping drive some of that cold Arctic air down into Saskatchewan and Manitoba. Interestingly enough, though, the southwestern corner of the province still on the warm side of that jet stream. That's why we've seen some of those warm temperatures throughout the afternoon hours. A mix of sun and clouds today, a few stray flurries out of some of this cloud cover to be expected. But other than that, we did see some sunny periods. Albeit a windy start to the day. We did see the winds really die off as we got through the afternoon hours. As we get into the day on Saturday, this area of high pressure tries to take hold and clear skies out. But as we get into the day on Saturday, some of this cloud cover just hangs on. So more of a cloudy start to the day for Regina into Saskatoon, but certainly back to the west looking at a bit of a brighter start, and certainly a colder start to Saturday into northern parts of the province. That high pressure center doesn't quite take hold, keeps us under a mix of sun and clouds Saturday into Sunday with a little bit of snow yet to come. Nothing really accumulating, but certainly looking at a bit of snow into parts of northern Saskatchewan as we get into the day on Sunday. What I think we do have a chance of seeing is some fog patches, particularly the further west you go in the province. So Swift Current, Kindersley into Maple Creek, I think have a chance of some fog patches, as do Regina and Saskatoon. So you could run into some patchy fog, but nonetheless, just be aware if you have to do any travel into the early morning hours that we could see some patchy fog first thing. Above seasonal again as we head into Saturday, -1 in Regina. We jump up above the freezing mark as we head into Monday with a high of 0. And then we're looking at temperatures kind of up and down as we get through the rest of the week, a bit brighter toward the end of next week. Into Saskatoon, again, a risk of some patchy fog first thing, 0 first thing in the morning. 1s for Sunday, Monday, a bit more cloud into Monday. And then, Sam, we are a bit brighter as we get toward the end of next week.
Thanks, Riley. We have some stunning video for you. That is a view from the spacecraft Blue Ghost as it orbits the moon. It's owned by Firefly Aerospace, a private company based in Texas. It's on a private mission to the moon, and right now it's been in orbit for 2 weeks, and it will attempt to land on the lunar surface this Sunday. If the landing is successful, it would be only the second time a privately owned spacecraft has landed on the moon. We'll be back after the break. After more than 2 decades, internet-based phone and video service Skype is shutting down. Microsoft says the service will no longer be available starting in May. The tech giant bought Skype in 2011 for $8.5 billion US, the company's largest acquisition at the time. Skype launched in 2003, and during the pandemic, it saw increased competition from the likes of Zoom, Google Meet, and FaceTime.
Well, we have a risk of some patchy fog overnight tonight in the southern part of the province. South and central, I think, have a risk of that, particularly the further west you go in the province into the early morning hours on Saturday. Certainly a bit more seasonal into the overnight hours, even below seasonal for places like Preeceville, Hudson Bay, Yorkton, looking at temperatures close to -20. Overnight -9 in Regina, -8 in Saskatoon. Closer to freezing as parts of the western part of the province are on the warmer side of that jet stream, keeping things just slightly warmer overnight tonight. Temperatures close to -20 or even close to -25 into northeastern parts of the province. Could see some wind chill values close to or below -30 through the overnight hours. Into the day on Saturday, mix of sun and clouds, temperatures jumping up above freezing once again as we get through the day on Saturday. Certainly looking at a bit more of a seasonal day tomorrow, and Sam, not as much of a bite in the air as we get through the day.
Saskatoon's Braden Shen has joined a special club in the NHL. On Thursday, he played his 1,000th game in the league when St. Louis visited the Washington Capitals, a game the Blues also won 5-2.
When you come in the league, the older veteran guys on the team say, enjoy every minute of it because it goes fast, and it really does. It really does. It doesn't feel like I'm at 1,000 games right now. It doesn't feel like I'm in my 8th season with the St. Louis Blues. But at the end of the day, time flies. But at the same time, when you do look back on it, you realize how many special teammates and people you've met throughout the game of hockey, and it's a special sport.
Shen's dad, Jeff, gave a short speech and read out the starting lineup in the locker room before the game. Braden's older brother, defenseman Luke Shen, played his own 1,000th game in October with Nashville. They are the 8th set of brothers to each reach that milestone, but they are the first to do it in the same season. And that is it from us and from me for 6 months. I'm heading over to CBC Radio for 6 months to work on Blue Sky, and This is Saskatchewan. My first show over there is on Monday, and I promise you will be left in great hands over here. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great weekend.